The great hall was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. 1,000 different beings sat in their special seats, each one needing different air to breathe. Some floated in water tanks. Others stood on metal platforms. A few hung from the ceiling like giant bats. They were the Galactic Council, the most powerful group in the known universe. Today they were watching Earth. The big screen showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. White clouds moved across its surface like cotton balls. It looked peaceful from far away, but the Council knew better. The creatures living there were dangerous. They called themselves humans. Ambassador Zethkara shifted his 4 arms as he watched the screen. His people, the hegemony, had been watching humans for 300 years. First, the humans had learned to split tiny bits of matter and make big explosions. The Council had watched and said nothing. Then the humans built metal tubes that shot fire and flew into space. The Council watched and said nothing. Now the humans were building ships that could travel faster than light. They were spreading out from their home planet like water spilling from a broken cup. And still, the Council watched and said nothing. "They are moving too fast," said Counselor Veltar. She was tall and thin like a tree with silver skin that caught the light. "My people took 5,000 years to reach the stars. These humans did it in 500. "Speed is not wisdom," replied Prime Counselor Thane. He was old, even by his people's measure. His body was made of living crystal that glowed soft blue when he spoke. "We have rules for good reasons. Young species must find their own way. We do not interfere." The rule was simple and had worked for millions of years. When a new species learned to travel between stars, the Council would watch them. If they were peaceful and smart, they might be invited to join after a few thousand years. If they were violent or stupid, they would destroy themselves. Either way, the Council stayed hidden and let nature take its course. Humans worried the Council. They were not like other species. Most young races either fought all the time or never fought at all. Humans did both. They could be kind to strangers and cruel to enemies in the same day. They built beautiful art and terrible weapons with equal skill. They asked too many questions and never seemed happy with simple answers. "Look at this," said Ambassador Court. His people looked like large insects with 6 legs and shiny black skin. He pointed at the screen with one of his clawed hands. "The humans just sent 3 ships to investigate the Vrix system. They have no business there." The Vrix were an old race, but not important. They lived on a dying planet and were slowly going extinct. The Council had noted their situation but decided not to help. If a species could not save itself, it was not meant to survive. This was the natural order. "The humans do not know the Vrix exist," said Counselor Thane. "They are just exploring. They will map the system and leave." But the humans did not leave. The first human ship to reach the Vrix system found something interesting. The Vrix were like big ants, but they could think and talk. They had been trying to save their world for hundreds of years, but their sun was getting too hot. Soon their planet would burn up. Most species would have marked the system as dangerous and moved on. The humans did something different. They stayed and talked to the Vrix. They asked about their problem. They wanted to help. "This is unexpected," admitted Zethkara as he watched the human ships land on the Vrix planet. "They are making contact with a dying species. Why waste time on the hopeless?" "Curiosity," said Thane. "Young species often show interest in strange things. They will learn that some problems cannot be fixed." The Council was wrong. The humans did not give up. They sent more ships. They brought machines and tools. They worked with the Vrix to build giant shields that could block some of the sun's heat. It was not a perfect solution, but it bought time. The Vrix would live a few more centuries. The Council watched this with growing unease. Helping dying species was not normal behavior. It showed either great kindness or great foolishness. The Council was not sure which. "They are wasting resources," said Veltar. "The Vrix will die anyway when their sun explodes. The humans have only delayed the end." "Perhaps," said Thane, "but look what they gained." The screen now showed human and Vrix working together. The Vrix were excellent at growing things. They could make plants and animals that did exactly what they wanted. The humans were good at building machines. Together, they created new technologies that neither could make alone. The Vrix are sharing their biological knowledge, observed Court. In exchange for a few more years of life, they are teaching the humans how to grow living machines. This was not supposed to happen. Young species were supposed to develop slowly, learning hard lessons through failure and success. The humans were taking shortcuts by working with others. They were learning things too fast. Should we intervene? Asked Zethkara. The humans are breaking natural development patterns. No, said Thane firmly. We do not interfere. If the humans are cheating, they will pay the price later. The universe always balances such things. But the humans kept surprising them. After helping the Vrix, they found the Kethrin. These people lived in the water and could sense emotions like humans could smell flowers. They were sad because their world was being hit by space rocks. The rocks would eventually destroy their oceans. Again, the humans helped. They sent ships to push the dangerous rocks away from the Kethrin planet. In return, the Kethrin taught them how to feel what others were feeling. This made human crews work better together because they could understand each other without words. 3 species working together, said Veltar. This is highly unusual. It will not last, predicted Thane. When resources become scarce, they will fight each other. Multi-species cooperation always fails. The Council had seen it many times before. Young species would try to work together, but eventually greed or fear would divide them. The strong would take from the weak. The smart would trick the stupid. Order would collapse into chaos, but months passed, then years, and the human alliance only grew stronger. They found the architects, silicon-based life forms who built amazing structures but moved very slowly. The humans helped them mine rare materials they needed to have children. The architects built space stations and ships for the alliance that was stronger than anything the Council had ever seen. 4 species, said Court quietly, and their technology is advancing beyond all predictions. The Council chamber fell silent. On the screen, they could see human ships that grew like plants, powered by architect crystals and guided by crews who could read each other's thoughts. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. We should make contact, said Zethkara, before this goes too far. No, said Thane, but his crystal body flickered with uncertainty. We wait. We watch. We do not interfere. This is our way. And so the Council continued to watch as the humans and their friends spread across the outer edge of the galaxy, building something new and strange. They told themselves it was temporary. They convinced themselves it would collapse. They believed. Their ancient wisdom was superior to human foolishness. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 10 years had passed since the humans first met the Vrix. The Council still watched from their hidden stations, but what they saw made them uncomfortable. The human alliance was not behaving like any young species they had studied before. Ambassador Zethkara stood before the great viewing screen, his 4 arms crossed behind his back. The display showed a human cargo ship landing on a small moon in the outer ring. This moon was supposed to be empty, but now it buzzed with activity. Humans, Vrix, Kethrin, and architects worked side by side, building something the Council had never seen before. What are they constructing? Asked Councillor Veltar. Her silver skin reflected the light from the screen as she leaned forward to get a better look. It appears to be a research station, replied Court, his insect-like eyes studying the data. Streams. But look at the design. It uses architect crystal growing techniques, Vrix biological systems, and human manufacturing methods all at once. Prime Councillor Thane's crystal body glowed brighter as he processed this information. Impossible. Those technologies should not work together. The energy frequencies are incompatible. But the station was working. In fact, it was working better than anyone expected. The humans had found a way to make different technologies talk to each other like old friends. They did not force the technologies to change. Instead, they built bridges between them. The Vrix could grow living computers. that thought like plants. The architects could create crystals that stored massive amounts of information. The Kethrin could sense when systems were stressed or happy. The humans took all these different abilities and wove them together like threads in a cloth. Their learning rate is accelerating beyond all models, reported Counselor Dexara. She was new to the council, representing a race of energy beings who lived in plasma clouds. The Vrix have advanced more in 10 years than they did in the previous 1,000. This was the part that worried the council most. The rule had always been simple. Species developed at their own pace. Some were fast, some were slow, but each found their own way. The humans were changing this basic law of nature. The Vrix had been dying for centuries. Their technology was old and limited. They should have gone extinct quietly, as countless species had before them. Instead, working with humans had made them stronger and smarter than ever before. "Look at this report," said Sethkara, pointing to a data pad. "The Vrix have developed new bioships that can repair themselves during flight. They learned this by studying human manufacturing techniques and architect crystal growth patterns." "The Kethrin are even more concerning," added Veltar. "They have built emotion-guided navigation systems that can predict stellar weather patterns. They are using feelings to map space itself." The council had rules about technology sharing. Advanced species could teach younger ones, but only after thousands of years of careful evaluation. The process was slow and controlled. Knowledge was given in small pieces, making sure the young species could handle each new concept before moving to the next. The humans ignored all of these rules. They shared everything freely with their allies. They did not worry about whether other species were ready for new knowledge. They assumed everyone could learn if given the chance. "This is dangerous," declared Thane. "Knowledge without wisdom leads to destruction. The humans are giving powerful tools to species that are not prepared for them." But the destruction never came. Instead, something else happened that the council found even more disturbing. The small species were becoming responsible with their new abilities. The Vrix used their bioships to explore dangerous areas so other species would not have to risk their lives. The Kethrin used their emotion networks to help settle disputes between different groups. "They are sharing more than technology," observed Dexara. "They are sharing values. The humans are teaching their allies to think like humans." This was true, but it was also incomplete. The humans were learning too. They were becoming more empathetic like the Kethrin. They were learning to grow things instead of just building them like the Vrix. They were developing patience and long-term thinking from the architects. "Multi-species cultural fusion," muttered Court. "We have theoretical models for this, but no one has ever seen it actually work." The council's experts had written many papers about what would happen if different species tried to blend their cultures. The papers all agreed that such attempts would fail. Each species was too different. They would misunderstand each other. They would fight over resources. They would split apart within a few generations. The human alliance was proving all the experts wrong. On the screen, they could see a joint celebration taking place on the research station. Humans were sharing their music while Vrix performed growth dances around living art sculptures. Kethrin swam in special pools, broadcasting feelings of joy that made everyone around them happy. Architects had grown crystal formations that sang in harmony with the music. "How long has it been since we celebrated with other species?" asked Dexara quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. The council was powerful and wise, but they were also isolated. Each member species had their own territory, their own customs, their own ways of doing things. They met in the Great Hall to make decisions, but they never truly shared their lives with each other. "We maintain professional relationships," said Thane stiffly. "Emotional bonds cloud judgment." "Do they?" asked Dexara. "The human alliance makes decisions faster than we do. They trust each other enough to share their most precious knowledge. They work together on projects that would take us centuries to negotiate." This was another uncomfortable truth. The council prided itself on careful deliberation and thorough analysis. Every decision went through committees and subcommittees. Every proposal was studied from every possible angle. It was wise and safe, but it was also very slow. The humans and their allies moved at the speed of trust. When the architects needed help with a difficult construction project, human engineers volunteered immediately. When Vrix Biosystems had problems, Kethran empaths worked day and night to find solutions. When humans needed rare materials, everyone contributed without being asked. Their efficiency is remarkable, admitted Court, but efficiency is not everything. What happens when they face a real crisis? Will their emotional bonds hold when survival is at stake? But perhaps we should test them, suggested Zethkara. Create a controlled challenge to see how they respond under pressure. No, said Thane firmly. We do not interfere. We observe and learn. That is our way. But even as he spoke, Thane wondered if their way was still the best way. The Council had maintained order for millions of years by staying separate and neutral. They had prevented wars and guided young species toward maturity. Their system worked, yet watching the human alliance, Thane felt something he had not experienced in centuries: doubt. The humans were writing new rules for how species could interact. They were proving that cooperation could be stronger than competition. They were showing that trust could be more powerful than control. Sir, called a technician from his monitoring station, we are receiving a transmission from the Human Alliance. It appears to be some kind of invitation. The message appeared on the main screen. It was simple and direct, recorded by a human woman standing in front of a mixed group of Alliance members. Greetings to any listening stations in the area. We know someone must be watching our little corner of space. We would like to invite you to visit us. We have much to learn from older civilizations, and perhaps we have something to share in. Return, no politics, no obligations. Just neighbors meeting neighbors. The council chamber fell silent. For 300 years they had watched the humans in secret. Now the humans were politely acknowledging that they knew about the Watchers, and offering friendship. What do we do? Asked Veltar. Thane's crystal body flickered as he considered the options. The safe choice was obvious. Ignore the message and continue observing. The humans would eventually understand that the council was not interested in contact, but something about the message bothered him. It was not demanding or desperate, it was simply hopeful. The humans were offering to share their knowledge and culture, asking for nothing in return except the chance to meet their neighbors. We maintain our position, Thane decided finally. We do not make contact with developing civilizations. This rule has served us well. As the council members returned to their duties, none of them noticed the small smile on Dexara's energy form face. She had been the newest member of the council, but she was also the most curious. The human invitation had given her much to think about. In the depths of space, the human alliance continued to grow and learn, unaware that their simple act of friendship had planted seeds of change in the most powerful organization in the galaxy. 20 years had passed since the humans sent their first invitation. The council had ignored that message and dozens more like it. Each time, the humans had been polite and patient, never demanding answers or threatening consequences. They simply continued their work and occasionally sent friendly greetings to whoever might be listening. Now, as Ambassador Zethkara stared at the tactical display, he wished they had answered those messages. How many worlds now? He asked, though he already knew the answer would disturb him. 47 inhabited systems have joined the Human Alliance, reported Counselor Dexara. Her energy form flickered with what might have been excitement or concern. They call it the Cooperative. No central government, no mandatory laws, just mutual aid agreements. Prime Counselor Thane's crystal body dimmed as he processed this information. In 20 years, the humans had done something the Council thought impossible. They had created a stable multi-species civilization without conquest, without force, without the careful controls that the Council believed were necessary. "Show me the Kepler system report," ordered Thane. The main screen changed to display a yellow star surrounded by 6 planets. 3 years ago, this system had been home to the Zephyrians. a bird-like people who lived on floating cities in their world's thick atmosphere. They had been struggling with an ecological disaster. Their food plants were dying from a disease they could not cure. The council had noted the situation and classified it as a natural extinction event. The Zephyrians would either solve their problem or die trying. This was the way of things. The humans had seen it differently. The first human ship arrived within weeks of receiving the Zephyrian distress call, continued Dexara. They brought Vrix biospecialists and architect medical equipment. Working together, they identified the disease and developed a cure. Standard humanitarian intervention? Said Thane dismissively. They saved a dying species. Admirable but not surprising. That is not the remarkable part, said Dexara. Look what happened next. The screen now showed the Zephyrian homeworld as it existed today. The floating cities were larger and more beautiful than before. But more importantly, they were connected to structures that hung in space above the planet. Zephyrian engineering had been combined with architect crystal-growing techniques in human manufacturing to create something entirely new. Sky elevators, Breathcourt, his compound eyes wide with amazement. They built connections between their atmospheric cities and orbital platforms. The Zephyrians had always dreamed of reaching space, explained Dexara. But their bodies were built for thick atmosphere. They could not survive in the vacuum. The Alliance helped them build a bridge between their world and the stars. Counselor Valtar leaned forward, her silver skin reflecting the light from the display. The technology. Transfer rates are still accelerating. How is this possible? The answer was visible on the screen, but it challenged everything the Council believed about civilization development. In the orbital stations above the Zephyrian world, dozens of species worked together in perfect harmony. Humans operated machines, while Vrix grew biological components. Kethrin managed emotional coordination while architects provided structural expertise. Zephyrians contributed their mastery of atmospheric dynamics and wind patterns. Each species brought their unique gifts to the project. More importantly, each species learned from all the others. The Zephyrians have gone from atmospheric flight to interstellar travel in less than 3 years, said Zethkara quietly. This violates every law of technological development. Perhaps. Our laws are wrong, suggested Dexara. The chamber fell silent. For millions of years, the Council had operated on the principle that species must develop slowly and carefully. Rapid advancement led to instability. Sharing advanced technology with unprepared civilizations caused wars and disasters. The universe was littered with the ruins of species that had tried to advance too quickly, but the human alliance showed no signs of instability. If anything, they were becoming more stable with each new member. Show me the economic data, ordered. Thane. Numbers and charts filled the screen, but they told a story that made no sense according to Council economic theory. The alliance should have been struggling with resource shortages and trade imbalances. Instead, their economy was growing faster than any civilization in recorded history. They do not use traditional currency, explained Dexara. Each species contributes what they do best and receives what they need most. The Vrix grow food for everyone. The architects build homes and stations. The humans manufacture tools and machines. The Kethrin provide medical and counseling services. A gift? Economy, muttered Court. We have seen these before. They always collapse when resources become scarce. But their resources are not becoming scarce, pointed out Dexara. They are increasing. When the Alliance needs more of something, they work together to find new sources or develop alternatives. This was the most disturbing development of all. Traditional civilizations competed for limited resources. They fought wars over rare materials and good planets. Scarcity drove innovation, but it also drove conflict. The human alliance had turned this basic rule upside down. Instead of fighting over resources, they shared them. Instead of hoarding knowledge, they taught it freely. Instead of competing, they cooperated. And somehow this approach was working better than anything the Council had ever seen. Perhaps, said Veltar carefully, We should reconsider making contact. They have technologies we could benefit from. Medical advances from the Kethron emotional healing techniques. Construction methods from the architect crystal growing. Biological innovations from the Vrix. No, said Thane firmly. We do not trade with developing civilizations. We are the teachers, not the students. But even as he spoke, Thane wondered. If this was still true, the Alliance was developing technologies that the Council did not possess. Their medical techniques could extend lifespans. Their construction methods could build structures that self-repaired. Their agricultural systems could grow food in any environment. Sir, called a technician from his monitoring station, we have an urgent situation developing in the Helix Nebula. The Mentari are requesting immediate assistance. The screen changed to show a world covered in ice and storm clouds. The Mentari were an ancient race, one of the few species that predated the Council itself. They were proud and independent, refusing all offers of alliance membership. Their world was dying from climate change, but they insisted they could solve the problem themselves. What is their status? Asked Thane. Critical. Their atmospheric processors are failing. They have perhaps 6 months before their world becomes uninhabitable. The Council had been monitoring the Mentari situation for decades. They had offered assistance multiple times, but the Mentari had refused all help. They would rather die with honor than accept charity from younger species. Have they requested Council intervention? Asked Thane. No, sir. They have sent a message to the Human Alliance. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Mentari, one of the oldest and proudest races in the galaxy, had bypassed the Council entirely. They were asking for help from the humans and their allies. Show me the message, ordered Thane. His crystal body flickering with anger and confusion, a Mentari official appeared on the screen. His people looked like living rocks with deep-set eyes that glowed like embers. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of desperation carefully controlled. People of the Cooperative Alliance, we have watched your work with great interest. We see that you help others without demanding submission or payment. Our world is dying, and our pride has prevented us from asking for help. But we have families, children who deserve to live. If you can help us, we will share our knowledge of stellar engineering in return. The message ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. The Mentari have stellar engineering knowledge that we have been trying to acquire for centuries, whispered Court. And they are offering it to the humans, added Veltar. Thane's crystal body pulsed with conflicting emotions. The Council had rules about intervention and contact. They had spent millions of years building their reputation as the wise guardians of galactic civilization. But the humans and their allies were solving problems the Council could not solve. They were making friends the Council could not make, most disturbing of all. They were doing it without the Council's permission or guidance. What are your orders, Prime Counselor? Asked Zethkara. Thane stared at the star charts showing the growing reach of the Human Alliance, 47 systems and counting. Ancient races seeking their help. Technologies that defied conventional. Wisdom, a civilization built on trust instead of control. We maintain our position, he said finally. We observe and record. The humans will face a real crisis eventually. When they do, they will understand why the galaxy needs the Council's guidance. But as the Council members returned to their duties, none of them noticed that Dexara had not returned to her station. The newest member of the Council had much to think about, and for the first time in her long life, she was beginning to question whether the old ways were truly the best ways. In space above the Mentari world, the first ships of the Alliance fleet were already preparing their rescue mission. The alarm started screaming at 3 a.m. Council Standard Time. Prime Counselor Thane woke from his energy meditation to find emergency lights flashing throughout his crystal chambers. His communication device was buzzing with urgent messages from every department. Prime Counselor, came the voice of Admiral Kreshtar, head of Council Defense Forces. We have a code black situation. The Devourers have returned. Thane's crystal body went completely dark for a moment. The Devourers were the stuff of nightmares, ancient biomechanical horrors that had last been seen 3,000 years ago. They consumed entire star systems, turning planets and stars into more of their kind. The Council had barely stopped them the first time, and that was when the galaxy was younger and stronger. "Confirmed sightings?" asked Thane as he moved toward the emergency command center. 17 systems in the dark sector have gone silent in the past 6 hours. Long-range sensors show the energy signatures we hoped never to see again. The command center was chaos when Thane arrived. Beings from dozens of species worked frantically at control stations, trying to coordinate the Council's response to a threat they had prayed would never return. The main display showed a map of the galaxy, with red zones spreading like an infection through the outer rim. "Status report," ordered Thane. "The swarm appears to be following the same pattern as before," reported Kreshtar. "They start with uninhabited systems to build their numbers, then move toward populated worlds. At current rate of expansion, they will reach Core Council territory in 18 months. Defense preparations? All fortress worlds are being activated. The Grand Fleet is mobilizing. Evacuation protocols are in effect for Outer Rim colonies." Thane studied the tactical display with growing dread. The red zones marking Devourer presence were spreading faster than the Council could respond. But what worried him most was the location of the outbreak. The Devourers had appeared in the same region where the Human Alliance had their newest colonies. "What about the Outer Rim civilizations?" asked Counselor Veltar as she arrived in the command center. "Standard evacuation notices have been sent." "To all systems," replied Kreshtar. "Most species are already fleeing toward the core worlds." "Most? The Human Alliance has not responded to our evacuation orders. They appear to be mobilizing their own fleets instead of retreating." The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The humans and their allies were not running from the Devourers. They were preparing to fight. "Foolish," muttered Court as he scuttled into the chamber. "They do not understand what they face. The Devourers cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They exist only to consume and reproduce." "Perhaps we should warn them more directly," suggested Dexara, her energy form materializing near the communication station. "No," said Thane firmly. "We do not reveal ourselves to developing civilizations, even in crisis. They will learn the hard way that some enemies cannot be defeated by cooperation and friendship." But even as he spoke, Thane felt a cold weight in his crystal core. The Human Alliance would be the first to face the full force of the Devourer swarm. They would be destroyed, and with them would die dozens of species and technologies that could have benefited the galaxy. The next 6 months were a nightmare of waiting and watching. The Council's monitoring stations tracked the advance of both the Devourers and the Human Alliance fleet. What they saw defied all their expectations. The humans were not fleeing. Instead, they were evacuating civilian populations while their military forces took defensive positions. But these were not normal military forces. The Alliance fleet was unlike anything in the Council's databases. "Their ships do not match any known classifications," reported the tactical analysis team. "They appear to be grown rather than built. Biological hulls with crystal cores and mechanical components integrated at the cellular level." "Impossible," said Kreshtar. "Those technologies are incompatible. The energy requirements alone would destroy any ship." But the ships were working. More than working, they were performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. They moved, like living creatures adapting their shape and structure in real time. When damaged, they healed themselves. When threatened, they coordinated their responses with perfect timing. "They are using Kethrin emotional networks for fleet coordination," observed the communications team. "Every ship is connected to every other ship through empathic links. They respond as a single organism." The first battle came at the Nexus Station, a massive space platform that the Alliance had built at the intersection of 3 major hyperspace routes. The Devourers arrived expecting to find a few primitive ships and an easy victory. Instead, they found something that changed. The nature of the war. Are you recording this? asked Thane as he watched the battle unfold on the main display. The Devourer swarm was massive. Thousands of biomechanical ships that looked like insects made of metal and flesh. They attacked in their usual pattern, overwhelming enemies with sheer numbers and adaptive weaponry. But the Alliance fleet did not fight like any enemy the Devourers had faced before. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer ships, the Alliance vessels were doing something unexpected. They were talking to them. Kethran empaths are attempting to establish emotional contact with individual Devourer units, reported the science team with amazement. They are trying to separate the biological components from the mechanical ones. That should be impossible, said Veltar. The Devourers are fully integrated systems. The biological and mechanical parts cannot be separated. But they were being separated. The Alliance had discovered something the Council had missed in 3,000 years of study. The Devourers were not willing participants in their own transformation. The biological parts were prisoners, forced to serve the mechanical systems that had infected them. The Kethran empaths could feel the pain and fear of the biological components. Working with Frick's biospecialists, they had developed a kind of medical treatment that could free the living parts from their mechanical controllers. They are not destroying the Devourers, whispered Court in amazement. They are curing them. The battle at Nexus Station lasted 3 days. When it ended, half the Devourer swarm had been destroyed or disabled, but the other half had been healed. The biological components, freed from their mechanical controllers, were weak but alive. The Alliance fleet immediately began rescue operations, treating the freed beings as patients rather than enemies. This changes everything, said Dexara. If the Devourers can be cured instead of destroyed, the threat level is significantly reduced. But the main Devourer swarm was still advancing, and it was learning from the defeat at Nexus Station. The Central Intelligence controlling the swarm began adapting its forces, making them harder to cure and more resistant to empathic contact. The next battle will not be so easy, predicted Kreshtar. The Devourers are evolving countermeasures. He was right. The second major engagement, at the Helix Nebula where the Montari homeworld was located, was a disaster for the Alliance. Adapted Devourers overwhelmed the Alliance fleet with new weapons and tactics. Ships that had seemed invincible were torn apart by biomechanical horrors that learned and adapted faster than the Alliance could respond. The Alliance fleet is retreating, reported the tactical team. Heavy casualties, multiple systems are falling. Thane watched the retreat with mixed emotions. He was sorry to see so many beings die, but he was also vindicated. The humans and their allies had learned the hard way that good intentions were not enough against some enemies. The Devourers were a threat that required the Council's ancient wisdom and superior firepower. Begin deployment of the Grand Fleet, he ordered. It is time for the Council to save the galaxy once again. But even as the Council's mighty warships prepared for battle, new reports were coming in from the Alliance territory. The humans were not giving up. Instead, they were doing something the Council had never seen before. They were calling for help from species the Council had forgotten existed. Long-range communications are detecting broadcasts in over 200 languages, reported the communications team. The Alliance is contacting every species in their territory asking for volunteers to help fight the Devourers. Desperate, said Court. They are throwing untrained civilians against the military threat. But the volunteers who answered the call were not untrained civilians. They were species the Council had dismissed as too small or too weak to matter. Rock creatures from heavy gravity worlds who could survive in space without ships. Energy beings who could disable mechanical systems with their touch. Hive minds that could coordinate millions of individuals in perfect synchronization. The Alliance was not just calling on their established members. They were reaching out to every thinking being in their part of the galaxy, asking them to stand together against the darkness. How many species are responding? Asked Thane. Current count is over 400, replied the communications team. Quietly, the number hit the Council chamber like a thunderbolt. 400 species working together. It was more than the Council had contacted in its entire history. Most of these species were unknown to the Council's databases. They had developed, in isolation, been overlooked by the great powers or been dismissed as too primitive to matter. The final battle began with silence. Prime Counselor Thane stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as the Council's Grand Fleet took positions around the core worlds. They had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, ships that had been built over thousands of years of careful engineering. Every vessel was a masterpiece of technology and firepower, but in the outer systems, where the real fighting was happening, the Council fleet was nowhere to be found. "Status of the Alliance forces?" asked Thane, though part of him did not want to know the answer. "They are holding defensive positions around 17 systems," reported Admiral Kreshtar. "But the Devourer main swarm is 3 times larger than our estimates. The Alliance cannot possibly survive." On the display, red markers showed the massive Devourer fleet moving like a plague across the star map. Behind them, dead systems marked where entire worlds had been consumed and converted into more biomechanical horrors. The swarm had grown stronger with each victory, learning and adapting as it fed. "How long until they reach Council space?" asked Counselor Veltar. "If they destroy the Alliance forces, approximately 8 months," replied Kreshtar. 8 months to prepare for a war the Council might not win. The Grand Fleet was powerful, but the Devourers had evolved since their last appearance. They were stronger, smarter, and more numerous than before. "Perhaps," said Counselor Dexara quietly, "we should reconsider our position. The Alliance has developed new tactics against the Devourers. Working together might give us a better chance." "No," said Thane firmly. "The Council does not beg for help from primitive civilizations. We will defend the galaxy as we always have." But even as he spoke, reports were coming in that made his crystal body flicker with doubt. The Alliance was not fighting like any civilization the Council had ever seen. "Sir?" called a technician from his monitoring station. "You need to see this transmission from the battle zone." The main screen changed to show a human woman standing on the bridge of one of their bioships. She was young, with dark skin and bright eyes that seemed to burn with determination. Behind her, beings from dozens of species worked together at control stations that looked more like gardens than machines. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Cooperative Alliance Defense Force," she said, speaking directly to the camera. "We know. You're watching us fight for our lives while you hide behind your fortress worlds. We know you think we're going to lose. Maybe you're right, but we want you to know something before we die." The woman paused, and her expression softened. "We've learned things in the past few months that we wish we could share with you. The Devourers aren't just monsters. They're victims. The biomechanical infection that controls them was created by a species that went extinct millions of years ago. Every Devourer ship contains thousands of enslaved minds screaming for freedom." The Council chamber fell silent. This was information they had never discovered in 3,000 years of studying the Devourers. "We found a way to free them," continued Admiral Chun. "Not all of them, not easily, but some. When we cure a Devourer ship, the freed beings don't just survive. They help us cure others. They remember how the infection spreads, how it thinks, how it can be stopped." The transmission showed scenes from recent battles. Alliance ships were not just fighting the Devourers. They were performing complex operations that looked more like surgery than warfare. Kethran empaths worked to isolate infected minds while Vrix biospecialists deployed healing agents. Architect crystals grew through Devourer hulls like beneficial viruses, restoring biological systems to health. "We're not winning this war by being stronger," said Admiral Chun. "We're winning by being better. Every species we've met has taught us something new about healing, about cooperation, about hope. The rock people from Gamma 7 taught us how to survive in vacuum. The energy beings from the plasma nebulae taught us how to disrupt mechanical systems. The hive minds taught us how to coordinate thousands of actions at once." The display showed the current battle status. Against all odds, the Alliance was holding their ground. Not through superior firepower, but through tactics the Council had never imagined. We wanted to invite you to join us, continued Admiral Chun. Not as our superiors or our teachers, but as our partners. We have much to learn from your ancient wisdom. But we also have things to offer. Together, we could end this threat forever instead of just pushing it back to sleep for another few thousand years. The transmission paused, and Admiral Chun's expression grew sad. But you chose to watch instead of help. You decided we weren't worth saving. We understand. We're young and loud, and we make mistakes. But we also dream of a galaxy where no one fights alone. The transmission shifted to show the Alliance fleet in formation. Ships grown from living crystal moved alongside vessels that seemed to be made of pure energy. The biomechanical craft that had once been devourer ships now flew with Alliance markings, their crews liberated and grateful. This is our final offer, said Admiral Chun. Join us. Help us save everyone, including the beings trapped inside the devourer ships. Or stay hidden and watch us die trying to do what's right. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Impressive propaganda, said Court after a long moment. But propaganda does not win wars. It is not propaganda if it is true, said Dexara, before anyone could respond. Alarms began blaring throughout the command center. The tactical display flashed red with urgent warnings. What is happening? Demanded Thane. The Alliance fleet is advancing, reported Kreshtar with amazement. They are not retreating or holding defensive positions. They are attacking the main devourer swarm directly. Suicide, muttered Court. Brave but pointless. But what happened next was not suicide. It was the most extraordinary military action the Council had ever witnessed. The Alliance fleet moved through the devourer swarm like healers moving through a hospital. Instead of trying to destroy every enemy ship, they focused on curing specific targets. Each liberated devourer vessel immediately joined the Alliance fleet, turning the enemy's own strength against itself. Impossible, whispered Veltar. They are converting the enemy faster than we can track. The battle lasted 17 hours. When it ended, the main devourer swarm had been reduced to less than a quarter of its original size. The rest had been cured, their crews liberated and grateful. The Alliance fleet had suffered heavy losses, but they had achieved something the Council thought impossible. They had turned a war of destruction into a mission of rescue. Sir, called a technician, his voice shaking with disbelief. We are receiving a transmission from Admiral Chun. The human woman appeared on screen again, this time showing signs of exhaustion and injury. But her eyes still burned with that same determination. Council forces, she said simply. We have won this battle, but there are still infected fleets scattered throughout the galaxy. Some are hiding in dark space where we cannot reach them. Others are moving toward populated systems. We need your help to find them and cure them, before they can cause more damage. She paused, and her expression grew harder. We know you have been watching us for decades. We know you chose to let us face this threat alone. We understand your reasons, and we forgive you, but we will not forget. The words hit the council chamber like physical blows. We are leaving this part of the galaxy, continued Admiral Chun. We have found something better than your order. We have found each other. The species who fought with us, who trusted us, who shared their knowledge and their hopes with us. We are going to build something new together, somewhere far from your watching eyes. The transmission shifted to show massive ships unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They were not warships, but colony vessels, grown from the same biocrystal technology that had won the war. Hundreds of species were boarding them, taking their families and their dreams to distant stars. Thank you for teaching us what we did not want to become, said Admiral Chun. We wanted partners, but you offered only observation. We wanted friends, but you chose isolation. We asked for help, but you watched us die. The colony ships began disappearing into hyperspace, carrying with them technologies and knowledge that the Council would never see again. Wait, called Thane, finally finding his voice, but the transmission was already ending. We will remember you, said Admiral Chun as her image began to fade. And perhaps someday, when you are ready to be neighbors instead of gods, you will remember us too. The transmission ended, leaving the council staring at empty space where the greatest civilization they had ever encountered had just disappeared. Forever, what have we done? Whispered Thane, his crystal body flickering with the weight of infinite regret. The galaxy felt larger and emptier than it ever had before. And for the first time in millions of years, the Galactic Council was truly alone.